If you want lasting love, stop doing things that cost you your self-respect. Real love doesn't require you to give up your power. It asks you to share it. When you love yourself first, you set the tone for every relationship that follows. And that's how lasting love begins. Love should never feel like a sacrifice that drains you. It should be a partnership that nourishes both hearts. Too often, women are taught, subtly or directly, that love means giving endlessly, that the more they do, the more secure the relationship becomes. But that belief is one of the biggest emotional traps in modern relationships. Real love is not about overextending yourself to prove your worth. It's about finding a rhythm of giving and receiving where both partners feel valued, respected, and emotionally fulfilled. When a woman gives too much of herself, her time, her emotional energy, her patience without receiving the same in return, she begins to lose balance. She confuses effort with love and sacrifice with loyalty. This is where the emotional exhaustion starts to show. She begins to question why she feels empty even when she's doing everything right. The truth is, overgiving doesn't build connection. It builds dependency. And that dependency makes it harder for her to see whether the relationship is truly healthy or just comfortable. In a balanced relationship, both people bring something to the table. It's not about keeping score, but about mutual emotional investment. When a woman constantly prioritizes his needs while ignoring her own, she unknowingly creates an unequal dynamic. Over time, he starts to take her effort for granted because it becomes the norm. He stops appreciating it because she's trained him to expect it. And when appreciation fades, attraction soon follows. What once felt like devotion begins to feel like obligation. There's a difference between generosity and self-abandonment. Generosity is when you give from a place of abundance, knowing your own needs are also being met. Self-abandonment is when you give so much that you disappear in the process. Many women fall into this trap because they fear that pulling back might make them seem cold or uncaring. But in truth, boundaries don't weaken love. They protect it. They remind both partners that respect and balance are part of real intimacy. A woman who gives endlessly without boundaries ends up teaching a man that her love has no limits, even when he stops earning it. This is dangerous because love, to be meaningful, must include accountability. When effort isn't reciprocated, when communication becomes one-sided, or when respect starts to erode, love alone cannot hold things together. A healthy relationship thrives not on how much one person gives, but on how both partners continuously show up for each other. It's important to understand that love doesn't require you to lose your individuality. In fact, individuality is what keeps love alive. Your goals, your passions, your friends, your sense of purpose, these are not distractions from your relationship. They are the very things that make you attractive, magnetic, and fulfilled. A woman who maintains her own identity doesn't just attract love. She commands respect. She reminds her partner that she is choosing to be there, not clinging out of fear. Sacrificial love might look noble, but it often leads to quiet resentment. When you give too much for too long without receiving emotional nourishment, you start to feel unseen and undervalued. You begin to question whether you're loved for who you are or simply for what you provide. The hardest part is that this realization doesn't come suddenly. It creeps in slowly as the spark fades and emotional fatigue sets in. The most empowering act of love a woman can offer is balance, to love deeply without losing herself, to support her partner without carrying his weight, to give affection without begging for attention. Love that lasts doesn't demand self-erasure, it celebrates self-awareness. Because when both people stand strong in their individuality, they create a partnership that grows stronger with time. The message is simple. Stop believing that love requires suffering. The love that's meant to last will never ask you to break yourself to keep it alive. Real love is not built on sacrifice. It's built on equality, respect, and mutual care. And when you understand that, you stop chasing love that drains you and start attracting love that restores you. Self-worth is the silent foundation upon which every healthy relationship is built. Without it, even the strongest attraction fades, and even the most promising connection turns into imbalance. When a woman values herself, she teaches others how to value her too. But when she doubts her own worth, she sends a message, often unconsciously, that she's willing to accept less than she deserves. And that message shapes the entire dynamic of the relationship. Many women fall into the trap of equating love with approval. They believe that if they're kind enough, patient enough, or understanding enough, love will be returned. But the truth is, self-worth doesn't come from how someone else treats you. It comes from what you allow, what you walk away from, and how you hold yourself in every situation. When you forget your worth, you start negotiating for attention rather than expecting respect. You start proving your value instead of living it. A woman who values herself doesn't need constant reassurance because she knows her worth doesn't depend on a man's validation. She understands that attention and affection are not the same as commitment. She won't confuse mixed signals for love, nor will she stay where she has to beg for clarity. Self-worth gives her the strength to walk away from emotional breadcrumbs because she knows she deserves a full meal. Losing self-respect in the name of love often starts subtly. It might begin with ignoring red flags, making excuses for neglect, or tolerating inconsistency because you fear losing the connection. But every time you silence your needs or justify behavior that hurts you, you chip away at your own dignity. And the more pieces of yourself you give up, the smaller you feel inside the relationship. Love isn't meant to make you feel small. It's meant to remind you of your value. When you hold strong to your self-worth, something powerful happens. You stop trying to earn love, and you start allowing it to come naturally. You attract partners who recognize your value because you're not desperate to prove it. You communicate differently. You don't chase, you don't beg, and you don't settle for confusion. Instead, you set standards that reflect your confidence, and you stand by them even when it's uncomfortable. Self-worth is also about accountability. It's about taking responsibility for the energy you allow into your life. If someone treats you poorly and you stay, you're indirectly teaching them that their behavior is acceptable. But when you draw a line and hold it with calm strength, you send a very different message. I respect myself too much to stay where I'm not valued. That kind of quiet confidence doesn't just earn respect, it commands it. A woman who knows her worth doesn't need to shout it from the rooftops. It shows in her actions, in the way she carries herself, in what she tolerates, and in how she responds to disappointment. She doesn't react with desperation when someone pulls away. She simply allows them to go, knowing that what's meant for her won't require chasing. That emotional steadiness is magnetic, because it signals strength, maturity, and peace. It's also important to remember that self-worth doesn't mean arrogance or emotional walls. It's not about being hard to get. It's about being hard to take for granted. It's about understanding that you are already complete, that love can add joy to your life, but it doesn't define your identity. When you love yourself first, you don't look to others to fill your emptiness. You share your fullness instead. In every lasting relationship, respect is what keeps love alive. And respect always begins with self-respect. When you value yourself, you inspire others to do the same. You stop chasing validation and start attracting devotion. You stop accepting confusion and start demanding clarity. The moment you decide that you are enough as you are, you stop settling for half-hearted love and start creating space for something real, something that mirrors the way you finally see yourself, worthy, whole, and irreplaceable. There is a powerful truth in love that too many people overlook. The one who chases always ends up losing power. When a woman begins to chase a man, emotionally, mentally, or physically, she unintentionally flips the balance of the relationship. What starts as a desire to show affection quickly turns into a silent competition for attention. But lasting love isn't built through pursuit, it's built through mutual investment. When both people contribute equally, the relationship grows. When only one does, it begins to fade. Many women chase not because they lack confidence, but because they care deeply. They think that by showing initiative, expressing constant interest, or trying to prove their loyalty, they can strengthen the connection. But the harder you try to prove your worth, the more it feels to him that your love is already guaranteed. And when something feels guaranteed, it's no longer treasured. A man who doesn't have to invest emotionally won't value the relationship the same way. Chasing also sends an unspoken message. Your approval matters more than my peace. That energy shifts the entire dynamic. Instead of two equals discovering each other, it becomes one person doing the work and the other deciding how much they'll give back. When you start chasing, you stop observing. You stop noticing whether his actions match his words because you're too focused on keeping his interest. And that's where imbalance begins. Not because you don't deserve love, but because you're working too hard to earn what should flow naturally. Real connection thrives on reciprocity. It's not about who calls first or who texts more. It's about emotional effort. When a man is truly interested, he will find ways to show it. He will call, plan, engage, and invest because he wants to. But when a woman constantly fills the silence, always reaches out, or adjusts her availability to match his convenience, she takes away his chance to step forward. He stops feeling the need to pursue because she's already doing it for him. When you stop chasing, you create space for truth to reveal itself. You allow the relationship to show its real strength. If he's genuinely invested, he'll meet you halfway. If not, his absence will speak volumes. Either way, you win because you're no longer wasting energy on someone who isn't choosing you with the same intensity. The right relationship should feel like two people walking toward each other, not one person running after the other. It's also important to understand that emotional chasing doesn't always look obvious. Sometimes it's replying instantly while he takes hours. Sometimes it's overanalyzing every message, adjusting your tone to please him, or constantly being the one to fix problems after arguments. These behaviors seem small, but they send a big message. I'll keep showing up, no matter how little you give. And that message encourages complacency. The more he feels he doesn't have to try, the less he will. Letting a man invest in you doesn't mean playing games or pretending to be unavailable. It means respecting your own value enough to let him earn emotional intimacy. Men, just like women, value what they work for. They feel proud when they contribute, when they get to show care and protection. But when all the emotional effort comes from one side, attraction slowly turns into comfort, and comfort without challenge kills desire. When you hold back from chasing, you don't lose him. You give him a chance to choose you. And if he doesn't, you gain something far more important, clarity. Love that's real doesn't require persuasion. It doesn't make you beg for attention or prove your loyalty. It meets you with effort, consistency, and mutual desire. So stop chasing attention and start embodying value. The woman who knows her worth doesn't run after love. She attracts it. She understands that true connection grows from balance, not desperation. When you let him come to you, not out of pride, but out of confidence, you change the energy completely. You remind him and yourself that love feels best when both hearts move toward each other, not when one is doing all the running. Boundaries are not barriers to love. They are the framework that keeps love strong, respectful, and lasting. Yet many people fear setting boundaries because they think it will push someone away. In reality, boundaries are what keep attraction alive. They show emotional maturity, self-awareness, and confidence, qualities that make a person magnetic. When a woman sets boundaries, she isn't being cold or distant. She's protecting her peace and ensuring that the connection grows in a healthy, balanced way. Emotional availability is a beautiful thing, but without limits, it can quickly turn into emotional overexposure. When you give too much of yourself too soon, your time, your vulnerability, your energy, you risk overwhelming the dynamic. The right person wants to earn your openness gradually, not have it handed to them all at once. True intimacy is built step by step, not by rushing into emotional dependence. A relationship without boundaries loses its sense of mystery, respect, and growth because everything becomes too easy too soon. When you don't have boundaries, you begin to overinvest emotionally. You find yourself constantly available, always saying yes, always accommodating, even when it leaves you drained. You may start to tolerate behaviors that don't align with your values just to keep the peace. But love that requires you to silence your needs isn't love. It's self-erasure. Every time you ignore what feels uncomfortable or wrong just to maintain connection, you teach the other person that your comfort doesn't matter. And over time, that becomes the unspoken rule of the relationship. Boundaries are not about control, they're about clarity. They communicate how you expect to be treated, what you can give, and what you will not accept. They create emotional safety. Not only for you, but for your partner too, because both people know where they stand. Without boundaries, resentment grows quietly. You start to feel unappreciated, misunderstood, or taken for granted. The things that once felt romantic start to feel heavy because you're giving from emptiness instead of abundance. It's important to understand that boundaries actually create desire. When you maintain your individuality and emotional independence, you remain interesting. You remind your partner that you are a whole person with your own life, passions, and values. That independence keeps the relationship dynamic and exciting. When two people respect each other's space, the attraction deepens because there's a healthy rhythm of closeness and distance, connection and independence. Love needs oxygen to breathe, and boundaries provide that space. Many women believe that saying no will make them seem less loving, but the opposite is true. Saying no when something doesn't feel right is an act of love for yourself and for the relationship. It shows honesty. It prevents emotional buildup and resentment. It ensures that what you give comes from a genuine place, not obligation or fear. When you say yes to everything, your yes loses its meaning. But when you have boundaries, every act of love becomes intentional, not automatic. Boundaries also filter out people who are not right for you. A man who is intimidated or offended by your limits is not someone capable of offering a secure relationship. The right man won't run away from your boundaries. He'll respect them. He'll understand that they make you confident and trustworthy. A person who values your emotional well-being will see your boundaries as a sign of strength, not rejection. Without boundaries, emotional dependence slowly takes over. You start to rely on someone else for your happiness, approval, and self-worth. And when that person pulls away, you feel lost. But when you have clear boundaries, you stay grounded even if the relationship changes. You know where you end and where they begin. You can love deeply without losing yourself in the process. The truth is, setting boundaries doesn't push love away. It protects it. It allows respect and attraction to coexist. It keeps emotional giving balanced and mutual. Boundaries say, I know my worth and I trust you to meet me there. When both people operate from that space, love grows stronger because it's built on understanding, not sacrifice. Real love doesn't need endless access. It needs healthy distance and clear respect. That's what keeps it lasting and alive. One of the most common mistakes people make in relationships is believing they can change or fix their partner. It usually comes from a place of love and hope, but it often leads to heartbreak and frustration. When a woman tries to fix a man, she unknowingly takes responsibility for his emotional growth, something that was never hers to carry. Real love isn't about saving someone. It's about accepting them as they are and allowing them to take charge of their own transformation. When you fall in love, it's easy to see potential. You might notice his ambition, his kindness, or the glimpses of emotional depth he shows in certain moments. And when you care, you naturally want to bring out the best in him. But the danger lies in mistaking potential for reality. You start building a vision of who he could be instead of seeing who he is right now. This makes you invest in a fantasy, not a partnership. You start thinking that with enough patience, love, or sacrifice, he will eventually rise to meet the version of himself you believe in. But that's not love. It's emotional labor disguised as devotion. The truth is, no one changes unless they want to. Growth requires personal accountability, not external effort. You can inspire someone by being strong, grounded, and emotionally secure, but you cannot transform them. When you take on the role of a fixer, you become more like a coach than a partner. You start managing his emotions, solving his problems, and guiding his direction. And in doing so, you stop noticing whether he's even contributing equally to the relationship. The dynamic slowly shifts from mutual connection to emotional imbalance. Trying to fix someone often leads to exhaustion. You find yourself constantly giving advice, forgiving repeated mistakes, or waiting for him to get it right. You justify his inconsistency because you've seen his good side. You explain away his inaction because you believe he just needs time. But while you're waiting for him to change, you're also teaching him that effort isn't necessary. He learns that your love will always be there, no matter how little he invests in his own growth. And that's how you end up carrying the emotional weight of two people. Love that lasts is built on accountability, not rescue. Each person must take responsibility for their own wounds, habits, and choices. You can offer support, but you cannot live someone's emotional journey for them. When a man truly values the relationship, he doesn't need to be fixed. He takes initiative to improve himself because he doesn't want to lose what you share. That's what real commitment looks like. Not promises, but consistent action. It's also important to understand that trying to fix someone often stems from fear. Fear of losing them, fear of being alone, or fear that love will fade if you stop trying. But love built on fear isn't love at all. It's dependency. True love requires equality and respect. When you stop trying to fix someone, you're not giving up on them. You're giving them the dignity to grow on their own. You're saying, I believe in your ability to change, but it's not my job to make it happen. That's strength, not coldness. You deserve a partner who meets you at your level, not one you have to pull up to meet you there. A man's emotional maturity and effort are his responsibility, not your reward for waiting. The right person doesn't need you to save them. They value you enough to save themselves. When you stop trying to fix a man, you make space for real love to exist. You free yourself from the exhaustion of carrying someone else's potential and open yourself to someone who's already doing the work. Love that lasts isn't about changing someone. It's about growing together, side by side. It's about accepting the other person's imperfections while knowing you don't have to compromise your peace to maintain the connection. Real love isn't about fixing. It's about finding someone who doesn't need to be fixed to love you well. Pretending to be someone you're not is one of the easiest ways to lose yourself in a relationship. It often starts small, agreeing with opinions you don't share, pretending to be okay with things that bother you, or hiding your true feelings just to avoid conflict. Over time, these little acts of self-silencing add up until you no longer recognize the person you've become. Many women fall into this pattern because they fear being too much, too demanding, or too emotional. But the truth is, pretending to be perfect doesn't make someone love you more. It only makes them love a version of you that isn't real. Authenticity is the foundation of lasting love. When you hide parts of yourself to keep someone's interest, you're essentially building a relationship on illusion. It may feel stable for a while, but eventually that facade starts to crack. You can only pretend for so long before the exhaustion sets in, the exhaustion of constantly managing your image, your tone, and your emotions just to maintain peace. Real love cannot grow in pretense because pretense blocks intimacy. True connection only happens when two people show up as their genuine selves, flaws and all. Many people mistake perfection for attractiveness. They think that being agreeable, easygoing, and always available will make them more desirable. But what actually creates deep attraction is authenticity. When you are unapologetically yourself, when you express your needs, your opinions, and your boundaries, you invite respect. The right person doesn't fall for your perfection. They fall for your realness. They fall for your laughter, your quirks, your honesty, and the way you make them feel safe to be authentic too. Pretending to be something you're not also leads to emotional imbalance. You start prioritizing your partner's comfort over your own truth. You agree to things that don't align with your values. You suppress your emotions because you don't want to appear needy or difficult. But every time you swallow your truth, you create distance between who you are and who you pretend to be. That distance eventually turns into resentment. You may begin to feel invisible or unfulfilled, wondering why you don't feel loved, when in reality your partner doesn't even know the real you. Being authentic doesn't mean being reckless with your emotions or sharing everything too soon. It means being honest about what matters. It means communicating with confidence, saying no when you mean no, and not apologizing for your needs. Authenticity attracts the kind of love that is steady and secure. It filters out those who only want convenience and draws in those who value connection. The moment you stop performing, you start allowing real love to enter your life. It's also worth remembering that vulnerability is not weakness. Many people associate being real with being exposed or fragile. But showing up as yourself takes courage. It says, "This is who I am, my strengths, my fears, my imperfections, and I'm still worthy of love." That level of self-acceptance is magnetic. It inspires trust and intimacy because it tells your partner that they can be themselves too. Authenticity invites authenticity, and that's what makes love sustainable. When you fake confidence, you might attract attention, but it will be shallow. When you fake happiness, you might avoid conflict, but it will be temporary. Only authenticity creates a relationship where both people feel seen and valued. Pretending may win admiration, but only truth earns devotion. You don't have to hide your emotions to be loved. You just have to find someone mature enough to handle them. Real love doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. It's not about being easy to love. It's about being real enough to be loved deeply. When you embrace your authentic self, you stop fearing rejection because you understand that anyone who leaves was never meant for the real you. The person who stays, who sees your truth and still chooses you, that's the love that lasts, because authenticity doesn't scare away the right person. It draws them closer, and it builds a love that feels safe, honest, and alive. In the end, lasting love isn't about how much you give, how patient you are, or how perfectly you perform. It's about how true you remain to yourself. A healthy relationship grows from mutual respect, shared effort, and emotional honesty. When you stop overgiving, when you know your worth, when you let him invest, when you set boundaries, when you stop trying to fix him, and when you show up as your authentic self, you create space for real connection to flourish. Love that lasts isn't built on fear of losing someone. It's built on the confidence of knowing you can love deeply without losing who you are. The right man won't be drawn to the version of you that bends to please him. He'll fall for the woman who stands tall in her truth, who knows what she deserves, and who won't settle for anything less than respect, effort, and loyalty. Real love doesn't ask you to sacrifice your peace or your identity. It doesn't demand endless giving or quiet suffering. It honors you, uplifts you, and meets you halfway. Because when you love yourself first, you don't chase love, you attract it. And the love that's attracted to your authenticity, your strength, and your self-respect is the kind that doesn't fade. It grows stronger with time.